In a national poll taken a few years ago, 70% of Americans expressed their concern about a decline in moral values in our society. Folks, there is what we would call a crisis of credibility in our nation. You can find corruption pretty much everywhere. You can find it in politics. You can find it in businesses. You can find it in sports. You can find it in academia. You can find it in entertainment. And you can also find it in churches. You could probably give me an example of a scandal in every major section of our society. Now, what is the cause of this decline in moral values? I can say it in two words. Truth decay. Truth decay. Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Freedom comes from truth. The more you know the truth, the freer you are in your spirit, in your life, in your family. The opposite is also true. The more you give up on truth, the more you forfeit your freedom. Now, I intentionally chose this phrase, truth decay, because I think it exemplifies what has been happening in our country and in our society over the last 60 years. Slowly, little by little, there has been an erosion of the value of truth in our society. We do not value truth like we used to. And if you don't stop the erosion, it's like your teeth. When it first starts, you don't know what's happening. You can't feel it. You can't see it. But that tooth decay is happening. And if you don't stop it, you lose your smile. You eventually lose your teeth. Folks, the same is true if we don't stop the decay of truth in our society. I think we're suffering right now many problems in our nation simply because of truth decay. And if it's not stopped, I think we will face even greater problems. The past 60 years, there has been a shift away from truth as the foundation of our society. You go back 55, 60 years ago, and people truly agreed on what is right and what is wrong. If people didn't do right, at least they knew it. They knew that what they were doing was wrong. Now today, many people claim they don't even know the difference between right and wrong. In fact, a lot of people even claim that there is no such thing as truth. So there is no right or wrong. This idea that there is no such thing as truth is called postmodernism or relativism. Here's the big idea behind postmodernism. What's true for you may not be true for me. And what's right for you may not be right for me. Folks, this is a very convenient philosophy because it means I can do whatever I want to do. It basically lets me off the hook saying there is no objective standard of behavior and I can do whatever I want to do. When Jesus said, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free, he was talking about the truth will set you free. Not a truth, not any truth, not the truth that you make up for your own agenda. That is not the truth that sets you free. It is the truth that sets you free. Last week we talked about the sincerity myth. The sincerity myth says it really doesn't matter what you believe if you're sincere. We talked last week in detail that you can be sincerely wrong. Folks, I have been sincerely wrong many times. If after this service you decide to go over and get on Interstate 4 and you go up or on what you think is the on ramp, but it is the off ramp, you're going to get on Interstate 4 and you're going to be in trouble. Very possibly you'll have an accident, damage your car, damage yourself. But you were sincere when you got on there. But you were sincerely wrong. Postmodernism, relativism, is built on the idea that there is no absolutes. You know, I think that's an illogical, unreasonable statement. In the first place, when you say there are no absolutes, you're making an absolute statement. Not only is it illogical, it's unworkable. The entire world operates on absolutes every day. When you go to the pharmacy and you take a prescription in, you don't just go in and say, just give me any old thing. You don't want that pharmacist to say, well, you know, I don't have what this calls, but, you know, this right here might work. No. You want an absolute correct prescription in the right dosage. You don't want any kind of truth. In fact, you want it to be absolutely true. Remember when they made the rocket shot to the moon? They wanted to hit the moon, not just get close to it. In fact, there were thousands of absolute corrections to keep it on its course. What if the law about stop signs was you don't have to absolutely stop. You just stop when you feel like it. Can you imagine what traffic would be like if there were no absolute traffic laws? I mean, you're on a busy highway, but you can back up if you want to. You can cross 5 lanes if you want to. Folks, the whole world, every single day of our life, operates on absolutes. Have you ever played or had to appeal to an objective standard when you were playing Scrabble? You know, somebody says sniffle fritzers is a word that's worth 56 points. And you say, no, I've never heard of it. And you say, yeah, it may not be true for you, but it's true for me. So what do? You appeal to an objective standard called the dictionary. In postmodernism, in relativism, what happens is people now value tolerance more than they value truth. In fact, the supreme value in our culture has become tolerance. It's more important to be tolerant than to be truthful. In fact, if you are truthful, then you're considered intolerant. I mean, how dare you say that something is always right or something is always wrong? That's intolerant and being judgmental. In fact, we've even redefined tolerance. Tolerance used to mean that you and I could disagree on something, but I would still treat you with respect because you're a human being. You're made in the image of God. The word now means that all ideas are equally valid. Folks, all ideas are not equally valid. If I say the moon is made out of rock and you say it's made out of Swiss cheese, that's not an equal valid idea. If I say the sun rotates around the earth and somebody else says the earth rotates around the sun, those are not valid and equal ideas. There are things in life that are absolutely true, and there are things in life that are absolutely false. They will always be true, and they will always be false. In fact, truth is not new. We just discover it all the time. We now know that we're made up of DNA. But that's not a new truth. It's just new to us. God knew it all along. So truth is something that we discover. But today, if somebody dares to say this is always right, they're accused of being intolerant and judgmental. Today, as we do part 2 in our series on worldviews, I want us to look at the damaging effect of truth decay in our society, in our families, and in our personal lives. What it does to personal lives when we let go of truth. Lord willing, next week we're going to look at the 5 ways you can know the truth. So what happens when we throw out truth? All kind of things start happening. Actually, there are 6 signs of truth decay, and we see them in our society. Number 1 is immaturity. Immaturity happens when we give up truth and we value tolerance more than truth. In many ways, our society is becoming more and more immature. You can especially see it on television shows. One of the ways you can see it is we are less willing to accept responsibility, which is a mark of maturity. When there is no right and wrong, when there is no standard of false and true, then we all act in irresponsible ways. I can blame other people for my problems if there's no right and wrong. I can be disorganized. I can pass the buck. I can expect other people to take care of me, which is what immature kids expect. I can expect the government or somebody else to solve my problems because I'm not responsible. That is immaturity. The Bible says in Ephesians 4, let us be no longer little like children, forever changing our minds about what we believe because someone else has told us something different or has cleverly lied to us and made the lie sound like truth. Have you ever noticed how often teenagers change their mind? Even in getting dressed? Have you ever noticed that preschoolers do not automatically keep their room straight? Why? They're mature. They're not responsible. But folks, when we become a society like that, here's what happens. Proverbs 29:18 says, a nation without God's guidance is a nation without order. Why? Because we're acting immaturely. The ability to know the difference between right and wrong is a mark of maturity. Now, in each of these areas, I'm going to talk about society, but I also want to make it personal too. I want to ask you to write a question down. This is a question about immaturity. Ask yourself, when do I act childish? When do I tend to be irresponsible? When do I tend to pass the buck? In what areas of my life do I tend to blame other people? Do I blame other people for my unhappiness? You know, the truth is you're as happy as you choose to be. When you blame others, you're being irresponsible. And that is a mark of truth decay. The second one is immorality. Immorality is a mark of truth decay. Now, when I say the word immorality, most people think of sexual immorality. But folks, that's only one kind. Immorality just means no morals. It means I do whatever I want to do. If there is no standard of right or wrong, then anything goes. The Bible tells us in the book of Judges that during that period of time, the nation of Israel, that everybody or everyone did what was right in their own eyes. In other words, everybody did their own thing. Sounds like our culture today. If there is no standard of right and wrong, then anything goes. When there is no truth, then I become the center of the universe. And I get very concerned about my self-involvement. I'm preoccupied with me. I'm self-centered. I'm worried about my pleasure and my goals and my getting ahead. I don't really care about anything else. The Bible tells us in Ephesians 4:19, they don't care anymore about right and wrong, and they've given themselves over to immoral ways. Their lives are filled with all kinds of impurity and greed. They're saying, I really don't care what God says. I'm going to make up my own truth. I'm going to do what I want to do. Here's how truth, I'm going to keep wanting to say tooth, I'm sorry. Truth decay. This is how it works. When you do something wrong, every time you do it, it gets easier. I don't know if you figured that out or not. But the first time you do something wrong, it really bugs you. You feel real bad about it. All kind of warning lights start going off. But the more you do something, it becomes easier and easier. And then all of a sudden it doesn't bother you anymore that you're lying to your husband or your wife or somebody else. It just gets easier and easier. The more immoral, that means without moral, society becomes, the more they make fun of morality. Have you noticed this on television? Nothing is sacred anymore. We make fun of everything, including things that are true, things that are right, things that are good. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 9, the stupid ridicule right and wrong. How do you know when there's truth decay in your own life? You start rationalizing things. Rationalizing is when you make up excuses in your mind what your heart is telling you is wrong. In your heart, you know it's wrong, but you want to do it anyway, so you rationalize. You make up rational lies, an excuse in your mind to overcome what your heart is telling you. Don't do this. So how do you know when there's truth decay in your life? Here's the second question. What am I trying to rationalize? Now, I'm not talking about the obvious sins, but I'm talking about rationalizing my lifestyle. That I'm just too busy. That I don't take time to exercise. What am I trying to rationalize? I do the yeah, but. That is a sign of truth decay. Immorality, immaturity, and number 3 is unreality. Unreality. Unreality is sign of truth decay in a society, in a business, not in touch with reality in my own life. You know, when people stop believing the truth, they'll believe anything. When they stop believing in right and wrong, true and false, they become extremely gullible. Folks, I have met people that are more likely to put faith in a crystal than in God. It's a rock, folks. It's a rock. But they're more likely to trust a rock than Jesus Christ. I meet people that are more likely to trust tarot cards, or tea leaves, or horoscopes, or any other kind of questionable superstition. They say, well, I'm just going to trust that. Why? Because they'll trust anything except Jesus. The Bible says in 2 Thessalonians 2, since they refused to trust truth, they vanished to their chosen world of lies and illusions. Let me ask you, what illusions in our culture have you fallen for? We have to be very, very careful or we will buy into lies. And folks, when a culture stops valuing objective truth, people feel free to believe in all kinds of stuff. Actually, they feel free to make up stories, to blend facts and fiction, just to make up their own reality, to make up their own agenda. Today we have TV producers and movie producers who go out and they write stories about real people and they just make up their own facts about them and they call it a docudrama. The correct term is lies. It's not a docudrama. It's lies about real people that you just made up. Then they put it in a movie or a story and people will say it's a docudrama. No, it's fiction. But today, because we don't value truth, people blend facts and fictions all the time. In fact, Oliver Stone has made an entire career out of this. Everything he's ever done, he needs to put across it. This is fiction. But the same thing is also happening with authors and with reporters. Pulitzer Prize winners, journalists have been caught making up stories. Just made up these stories because it sounded better or it fit their political agenda. They blended facts and fictions. By the way, how do you know when there's truth decay in your life? You find yourself faking it. When there's truth decay in your life, you find yourself acting like something you're not. So here's the question I want you to write down. Where am I faking it? Or what am I faking? Just ask yourself, what am I faking? What am I pretending? When I look at any area of my life and say that's not really me, but I'm pretending to be that, that means it's an area of truth decay in my life. Sorry, I did it again. Number 4 is illegality. What do I mean by that? I'm saying if there is no standard of right and wrong, then anything can be considered legal. Because all law is built on the idea that there are things that are right and there are things that are wrong. If there is no right or wrong, if there is no truth, there are no laws. See, it doesn't matter if you murder somebody because you can get off on a technicality. Folks, when murderers go free because of a technicality in a culture, that is called truth decay. It doesn't matter what the truth is. What matters is the technicality. That's truth decay. When truth goes out the window, there's no standard of right or wrong, then you'll go after anything. Anything becomes legal. And folks, something we've all got to watch for is that we don't fall for the Titanic myth. The Titanic myth was that if you compartmentalize the stuff, you can't sink. Until the Titanic came along, all ships had one great hull. If they got breached, the whole hull would fill up with water and they would sink. So the Titanic was called unsinkable because there were all of these compartments in the hull. They'd never done this before. The theory was that you can take on a little bit of water, but the ship won't sink. Boy, were they wrong. If you compartmentalize, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble saying that. Somebody say it for me. Thank you. If you do that, you're facing a disaster. If you say, you know, I've got this little thing going over here, but I got it separate. Or I've got this thing here at work. I know it's wrong, but I got it separate. It's not going to sink my family or my reputation. When you compartmentalize your life, there's a word for that. It's called a lack of integrity. The word integrity comes from a math word that means one. One digit. Integrity. It's oneness. Integrity means your life is integrated. You cannot have integrity in your life if you've got your sex life over here and your family life over here and my work life over here and my church life over here and my pornography life over here. No. You don't have integrity. See, integrity is what you see is what you get. You're authentic. You act towards your kids the way you act towards your friends. And you don't act different at parties. And you don't act different at church. And you're the same. You're not wearing a mask. You're not a hypocrite. You're not a fake or a phony. You're same with everybody. That is integrity. When truth happens to decay in my life, I start to try to close it off. That little segment over here. It might take on some water, but I'm okay. Folks, the Bible says in Proverbs 20:18, when there is ignorance of God, crime runs wild. When there is ignorance of God, crime runs wild. You know, it's always interested me that in the 1980s, they outlawed putting the Ten Commandments in schools. They took them off of the walls. The Ten Commandments are moral truths. They're accepted by Jews, Christians, Muslims, and even people that are not Christians. They took the Ten Commandments out of the classroom. They took it off of the walls. And since then, violence in schools has gone straight up. Now, of course, there's no connection to all of that, is there? Folks, when truth is given a sideline, when there are no absolutes, then anything becomes possible. It says when there is ignorance of God, crime runs wild. If truth decay is not stopped, eventually anarchy happens. We've seen some of that in our own country. Let me get back to you personally. Ask yourself this question. Am I cheating on the edges? Not the big areas of life. Maybe just telling some little white lies. Am I cheating on the edges? That's illegality. Number 5 is idolatry. Idolatry is a symptom in a culture of truth decay. What do I mean by that? We idolize the wrong things. When I don't know right and wrong, when I don't know the truth, then my priorities and my values and the things of worship get out of whack and get really messed up. I idolize things like wealth and success and physical beauty. I idolize athletic abilities and intelligence or popularity, or I idolize cars and homes, or how your house is decorated. Or I idolize any number of different things which may not be wrong in themselves, but they don't need to be taught to be number one goal in our lives. Today, because truth decay is taking place in our culture, folks, we're actually flip-flopping values, and wrong things are now becoming right, and right things are becoming wrong. And good is bad, and bad is good. Black is white, and white is black. It's all messed up. We just seem to be reversing everything. Today, we turn criminals into celebrities. We give them multi-million-dollar book contracts and make them more millionaires. The worse the crime, the more money they can make. We kill unborn humans while protecting parasites and insects. What's the logic in that one? Or TV constantly mocks and ridicules marriages, except for gays, and that it promotes. So how's this working out? It's all reverse, and people are willing to worship anything except God. The Bible says in Romans 1:25, instead of believing what they knew was the truth about God, they deliberately chose to believe lies. They worship things, that's materialism, God made but not the Creator Himself. Here's the question for each of us personally. What have I been idolizing? What has become a little bit too important for me? It's not wrong, but suddenly it's at the top of my list. It becomes the number one goal in life. I've been idolizing wrong things. I've been worshiping the wrong thing. And then number 6 is injustice. Injustice is a sign of truth decay. Where there is no standard of right and wrong, there is no truth and no falsehood, then you can get away with anything. The Bible says in Isaiah chapter 59, our courts oppose people who are righteous. Justice is nowhere to be found. Truth falls dead in the streets, and fairness has been outlawed. Folks, if that is the damage of truth decay in our society, in our businesses, in our families, in our lives, what is the solution? We have to reverse the tide. How do we reverse the tide? By being people of truth. The Bible calls it being salt and light. Jesus said, in the midst of this corruption, you and I are to be salt and light. Listen to how Jesus says it, and I'm reading from the Message paraphrase. I love this. Matthew 5, Jesus says, let me tell you why you're here. In other words, why didn't Jesus take you to heaven as soon as you died, as soon as you accepted Christ? He's got a purpose for you here. He says, you're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this world. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and will end up in the garbage. Jesus says, here is another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. Jesus said, if I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I put you on a lampstand. Now that I have put you on a hilltop, on a lampstand, shine. Shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. Be open up to others, or by opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. As we see our culture continue to deteriorate. Jesus said, I want you to be light, not blinding light. I want you to be salt, not stinging salt in somebody's wounds. I want you to be light that leads people to Jesus. I want you to be salt that flavors life as they come to Jesus. Jesus says to you and me, be salt. Be like a star shining bright in a dark night.